Welcome to another Love Lessons episode where we talk about what we've learned and how we've grown in love and relationships. On this show, we are going to talk about what it takes to build a healthy, sustainable, resilient relationship. What it takes for you to get and stay in a healthy relationships. Stick around for the whole show so that you can hear our love stories and our love lessons. Some are personal stories, but others are submitted from guests. Again, thank you for tuning in to another Love Lessons podcast with the Hesters. So let's get into it. The topic is the reason why your relationships don't last. So I thought about this particular topic because there's so many people, and I would say younger people are the people that are on my mind right now, but that it's not only young people. So many young people that get into relationships and they're with one person today, another person 3 weeks from now. And I'm thinking of a few people that I have had in my life. I will not call any names, of course, but people I've had in my life, not necessarily personal, but just in my life. And I've seen them go in and out of relationships. And I've even had my share of doing that to a point. And it just made me reflect on it. So Charles and I, Mr. Hester and I, we're going to talk about it. So what's been your experience with seeing people go in and out of relationships?
I see most people go in and out of relationships. The first thing that comes to mind is, okay, well then who or what is the common denominator? And I've had to even do that with myself. And I've had to really humble myself and decide to do something different because I wanted a different outcome. So in my dysfunction and unresolved issues, I had to take a pause and stop and really evaluate myself and make those necessary changes to be in the type of relationship that I said I want, that I desire.
So did you figure out any reasons why your relationships weren't lasting?
Oh, sure, me. On the surface, it would look like, be very transparent and candid. On the surface, it would look like I was just a jerk. But under the surface, people were, unbeknownst to them, were dealing with an individual who was insecure, an individual who suffered from rejection, and in some cases, abandonment. So, realizing and pinpointing those things and dealing with those things helped me to overcome. Also, one of the biggest ones that people tend to take for granted is unforgiveness. There's a lot of people that I had to forgive in order to get myself to what I thought or considered was truly a healthy place so that I could have a healthy relationship. Your relationships are only as healthy as you are emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And of course, physically. But I hope that makes sense. Your relationships are only as healthy as you are, mentally and emotionally. So I had to get healthier because my relationships weren't, they were weak. And I had to pay attention to that. It was me.
I think a lot of people think their relationships are stronger than they are. I think a lot of people excuse things like people or guys, whether you're a female or you're a guy, being a quote unquote jerk. They call females something else, a word I am not going to share right now, but you can fill in the blanks. But when people act like that, I think there are people that accept that type of behavior. And they even, in some cases, they get even closer as a result of it. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting, but I have definitely seen it. And I have definitely been in that phase in my life in which someone could do something that I would deem as jerkish, like, but I would still be interested in that person even after they did do that. So I had found a resource. It was called this idea of trauma bonding. So had you heard, I told you about it. So had you heard of that before?
Yes, I
Before
have. I've heard of
I
it.
hadn't heard of it earlier. In school, I definitely have taken some counseling classes a while back, but that's why you have to do your continuing education credits because I hadn't heard of trauma bonding before. So, with trauma bonding, if you haven't heard of it, then it's basically when two people that have experienced some trauma in the past where they connect and they bond in a deeper way. So there's actually a pattern to this and it produces toxic behavior. And some of the stuff that you were talking about, you said quite a few things. So if people were taking notes, I think it's worth repeating. But you said things like they struggle with forgiveness. I think you said something about that. Just being a jerk, like being rude for no reason, that kind of thing. Um, and a lot of times this starts is because we feel like unsafe. We feel that we're unloved by whoever raised us. That's why there's a comedian that says, "Who raised you?" It's hilarious. You got to be there. You got to hear the whole joke. He's rolling his eyes at me, but whatever. Because I think it's hilarious.
Oh my God.
But he said, "Who raised you?" But anyways, a lot of times when you're growing up, when you don't feel safe, you don't feel loved, and your needs are not met, that's how it could start. But it also could, that could happen even in your adulthood. Because I have ran into people, they have a two-parent household, and it doesn't seem like they would be in so many toxic relationships, but something happened along the way that caused some type of trauma. So the cycle is you start off that way somewhere along the line, then you disown your needs, your feelings, so that you can attach to your caregivers. So you find a way to connect with them. Like, even if it's not healthy, you figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you figure out this unhealthy way of connecting with the people that raised you or the people that you feel like you really care about, then you see yourself as the issue when it's really not you, it's them. You see yourself as the issue, like you're not lovable. There's something wrong with you. And then you start to be like, okay, well, this must be what love is. So it must be when I start feeling like this is what love is. So it's really, I'm going to pause there because there's more to this cycle, but it does start when you're younger and you're trying to connect and it doesn't work out. And then you're like, okay, you're trying to figure out a way to be loved. I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
But what about the people that have parents that seem like they love them and stuff? Like, that's the only piece. For me, this makes perfect sense from my background. But I know there's people out there that do have parents that love them and they still go through this trauma bonding cycle.
Well, we can't determine what someone else would consider to be a traumatic experience. Like I can use myself as an example. Being 6 years old and going through so much transition, even though it wasn't negative per se. For me, it was still traumatic. Both my biological parents were divorced and remarried by the time I was 7. And there were some things that I had to overcome because of so much transition at one time for me, at a particular time in my life at such an early age. Um, so, needless to say, I acted out. I didn't know how to articulate that. I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know, um, looking back in retrospect, I don't even remember having any negative feelings about that. But, the proof was in my behavior at school. And come to find out, after, you know, seeking therapy, oh, the trauma from so much transition at one point in my life at such an early age. To somebody else, that may not seem traumatic, but for me, evidently it was.
So when you go through things that at a very young age, that's the time when you're starting to formulate your beliefs and your values and who you are as a person, because your beliefs and your values really determine who you are. And your actions are as a result of your beliefs. So it all kind of works together. So at that early age, when you were forming your beliefs, that's when the trauma happened, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Even earlier than that. So when I did start formulating my beliefs and my understanding, it was already tainted.
Okay. Because a lot of times parents are not able to help kids to process what's going on around them. So the stuff just happens. So you just get left with all these feelings, and these feelings are all over the place. And a lot of us don't do anything with them. We just let them stay all over the place.
Well, I think that's I would say two things concerning that. A lot of parents or a lot of adults don't even know how to process. They haven't been taught. Um, Number one, number two. Um, those type of experiences aren't like the cold or the flu. If you don't deal with them, it's not something that just in time it just goes away. What it will do is embed itself in your personality, and then people will say, well, that's just how they are. When in actuality, they need a few things. Therapy, one of them, and the other one might even be deliverance. Um, and part of that deliverance and purging process would definitely involve um, looking back over areas of your life where you felt abandoned, where you felt misguided by, whomever, mistreated, and to begin that forgiving process, because that all that stuff just doesn't go away. It finds a place in your spirit, in your soul, in your mind to hide. And being a minister, that's one way I look at it. But I also believe in the practicality of therapy. Get a good therapist, and I'll say it once, I'll say it again. Take your meds. Take full responsibility for your emotional and mental health. And in order to do that, there probably would be some things that we would need to look at that would even go back to our childhood.
So you said a lot there. So I don't know, just in case people don't know what deliverance means. Deliverance is definitely it's a spiritual practice, and it is ridding yourself of unwanted spirits, to make it simple, because I'm trying to make sure that people do like fully understand. And I know a lot of things, like even the phrase trauma bonding cycle or deliverance or whatever can be a little unclear. So maybe we should have a conversation about what that is on another podcast or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
deliverance or whatever, because that's more of a solution to trauma, basically. So you did answer my question, so thank you for that. So when you are in this trauma bonding cycle, is basically you were young and your caregivers, they introduced some things to you, and it's different for different people, but they introduced some things to you about love, whether it was how they loved, what you witnessed them doing when it comes to love, and somehow you formulated this belief that you were an issue, that you were not lovable, whether it was from your own faulty beliefs and interpretations of things that were happening around you, or it was by the way that they treated you, whatever the situation was, that's what your belief ended up being. So then you grow up and you start connecting with people that make you feel that same way you felt when you were a child. And you start transferring this into your relationships. And somehow you connect pain and shame in some cases with love. And a lot of times we don't even realize we're doing it. Like
No.
it's so subconscious, and you really have to do some deep work to even figure out that you're even doing this. And that's where the toxic behavior comes out. That's when you're scared to be vulnerable. You're scared to share who you really are. You start to disown how you feel. And then you also don't even stay true to who you are. So it just starts to be super chaotic. It starts to be a roller coaster, and you start to see yourself as an issue. Like, it's got to be me. It's got to be me. Like, what's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the common thoughts, is what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
So these relationships, they end up mirroring what has happened in our childhood, whether it's subconscious or we become a little conscious of it. It still is something that has happened to us at a young age. And in some cases, it's happened to us when maybe we were even a teenager. If you're older, this could have happened to you as a teenager, where you got involved with someone that was a little more experienced and got you caught up. So there's so many different stories about how this could happen, but basically you exhibit a lot of toxic behavior, and you're just not in a space to actually be open to real love. We could do so much with this.
Yeah. Because you don't have a good understanding of what love is. Um, and most individuals, I would venture to say, have had to go through some type of process to get to the point where they understand what true love is. Because
Yeah.
most people that I know, on some shape, form, or fashion, on some levels, dysfunctional.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we don't really know what dysfunction is. We just find ourselves doing it. And then once it's done, we kind of evaluate it like that was kind of toxic. So that's why I've started to notice that so many people do some toxic things. So and don't realize it until like after the fact. And then they have to either, like, I've had students talk to me like, okay, so this is what happened. And they'll go through the whole story and it'll sound super toxic, but they have no idea. That is toxic. And I've told people things that I've said, like some of my friends, like I've said some things and allowed some things when I was in a broken place, and they were like, no, 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 no. Like, what are you doing? So but that's the purpose of the podcast, is also to bring awareness to this type of thing, of some of the behaviors that are just plain toxic and unhealthy. Like you said, being a jerk.
Yeah, I just,
Simply
I didn't know any
put.
better. I didn't know any better. I just, and for many of us, that was also our defense mechanism. Because one thing that we will gravitate towards as humans is pleasure, but the other thing that we will try to avoid at any cost is pain. So if we sense pain is coming, or some type of unpleasant experience that may remind us of our childhood, there's no doubt that we would, act out in a certain way.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I always like to include a love story. So if they stick around, then we can share more about that, like what that looks like when you are like just basically trying to defend yourself. And I could also share when I was involved in situations and I just did not trust the person and the way that I acted, and how I kind of sabotaged what could have turned into something, but I wasn't ready. I was not ready. So hopefully they stick around for the love lesson. Okay, so we're back. I love the stories because that's how we learn, and people love juicy stories. This particular
The tea.
story, the tea.
People want the tea.
People want the tea for sure. So, this is not a super juicy story, honestly, but I definitely think this is something that is interesting. When I look back over things, it was right after I had got a divorce, and I was just kind of like, I was really focused on my career for the most part, but there was a guy I ran into and I was became interested. That was not really my initial thing. And I really just I was being super random with the whole situation, and I really did like him, but instead of just being like honest, like, I really do like you, and just being clear, I was just scared to call. Like, it was weird. Like, where somebody, I don't know, have you ever asked a female, like, oh, I haven't heard from you, or hey, stranger, that kind of stuff? So I was,
Hey, big head.
oh my God. I didn't like for me anybody to call me big head. I didn't like that. You called females big head?
No, that's what females do. They,
Oh, they called you big
hey,
head.
big head.
Oh,
Get the hey,
okay.
big head text.
Oh, okay. No, I was getting a hey stranger because I really wasn't reaching out. So I'm waiting. Like, I didn't feel like I could show interest the same way. I was like super nervous. Does he like me? Does he not? It's not supposed to be that way. That is definitely a sign that you're not ready. If that's the way that you're acting. And I think once we did connect, it was more like he was going through a divorce too. Like, we was both just a hot mess. And I think that's why we were like attracted to each other, but we really couldn't get anything real going because neither one of us trusted the other person. I don't know if this is even making sense.
It makes sense.
Okay, because I'm like, neither one of us trusted the other person. Like, what are their intentions?
Both of y'all needed time out.
Yeah, we needed a timeout, but we were not taking a full timeout. So It is not an easy thing to do, but if you do not decide to take a time out, then what will happen is you'll be confused. You'll go back and forth. You'll cause yourself unnecessary drama and in some cases trauma just because you're not ready and you need to sit down somewhere. So that's an example of like that kind of behavior. I don't know if I would say toxic because I really didn't do anything to the guy. Like to hurt him. I think I confused him though. I don't know.
Well, it could just been
Dysfunction. So not necessarily toxic, but I think I was definitely very confusing the way that I was acting. And I often tell females that, a guy will be very clear about whether if he wants to be with you or not. But do you think females will be clear? Are females typically clear if they want to be with you? Like a healthy female or no?
Yeah, I think healthy individuals, period,
Okay.
are able to articulate that.
So a guy is not going to be sitting there wondering whether she wants me, and a female's not going to wonder either.
Not if they're healthy.
Not if they're healthy. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, and I wouldn't want to call that toxic, but that is an unhealthy sign. I would say that's a sign that a person may not be healthy. I'm not going to put a label of toxicity on that, but if they're giving you mixed signals and things like that, they may not be healthy. So you might want to tread lightly, because that is one of my many stories. There was a few others about where it could have been a relationship, but there was no real trust established because I was not clear about what I was on, and he was not clear about what his intentions were. So, and you were definitely the polar opposite of that.
Healthy people are clear. Healthy people know how to set boundaries and not feel guilty about it. Healthy people know how to state exactly what it is that they want. And not being made to feel made to feel strange or crazy because this is what they want. They're like, this is it.
Right. And they're not too afraid to share that.
No, they're not.
Because when I look back on this particular situation, I was too afraid to share that, I would love to be in a relationship with you. Like, I was way too afraid to just say that straight up. But when I got healthy, I had no problem with saying that. Like, yeah, I would like to be married. I would like to be, exactly what I wanted. I had no problems. It was no apologies for it. I said what I wanted. I got what I wanted. So it worked out for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to wrap this up soon with an actual love lesson. Like, what are you supposed to do with all this information? Some of the reasons why your relationships don't last. Now what? I wanted to take a moment to tell you how excited I am to have a podcast. I finally have a podcast, and that was because of Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. For one, it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer, so it's really easy. And on top of that, it will get your podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. Many that I hadn't even heard of before Anchor. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So you don't have to build up this huge audience first. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one spot. So what I need you to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started with your own podcast. because you have a purpose and you have a voice that someone's waiting to hear. Okay, we made it to the end. Made it to the end. And this is my favorite part because I'm in education and I love coaching and helping people to achieve their goals in every area. So the love lesson, what do we take from all this? The reasons why your relationships don't last. You've got trauma bonding, you've got toxicity, scared to be vulnerable and say what you mean and mean what you say. You don't know who you are in some cases. We didn't talk about that much, but
Identity.
yeah, identity is a huge issue. So what should you do if you start to notice that your relationships aren't lasting?
Begin to see, begin to explore, go back and look at those relationships and begin to explore where the breakdown began. Or was there even a strong foundation to begin with? Look for where the breakdowns are. Why? Because a lot of relationships are seen to be on the surface okay until they're met with some type of hardship. And then when they're met with some type of hardship, then you will begin to see where individuals are still damaged, still triggered. Those areas where they're still damaged and triggered are definitely areas that need healing, that need attention. It's going to take some work. It is going to take some serious work. And for most people, it is going to be unpleasant because that process will require such a level of humility. And because in a lot of those situations and those relationships, you're going to have to say, hey, wow, this is what I contributed to the breakdown or the deterioration of the relationship. What do I need to do to fix it? I don't know how to fix this. Okay, now it even requires more humility because now you got to go get help.
Yeah, you definitely need to seek help at some point, even if it's just a friend. Just make sure that your friend's not toxic. But even if it's just getting someone to talk to and help you to process what has happened in your relationships, especially when it's somebody that really knows you, because they can help you with checking yourself. Like you only have control over your actions anyway. So you chose to get into the relationship. You chose to allow certain things to happen. You chose to repeat certain behaviors. You chose to respond the way that you responded, so on and so forth. And you have to really think to yourself, why did you make the decisions that you made? Why did you continue to make the decisions that you were making after you realized that they were toxic, after you realized that you had some trust issues or that you were getting away from who you know yourself to be? Like after you saw all that and you kept going and you saw that this was a cycle, then why did you continue? Why did you keep going? So I definitely don't recommend anyone to just continue going from relationship to relationship with no break and no reflection.
Oh yeah, that's because you run the risk of creating soul ties, and that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, you've thrown out another one there. So we've got deliverance and soul ties, or I feel like that's our vocabulary. So if you are listening to this and you are not sure what those words mean, there are videos and stuff about it, but maybe we need to talk about deliverance and soul ties and stuff like that, because I don't know.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if everybody knows what that is, but at the bottom line is you definitely need to take some time to check yourself and your own behavior and the things that you allowed in that relationship. And that's how you determine why your relationships don't last.
True.
Thank you for tuning in to the entire Love Lesson show. I hope you got some value out of the show, and I think right now is a great time for you to learn more about what Love Lessons is really for. So Love Lessons was created in an effort to put together a book. The book has evolved since I initially came up with this idea. So this book is actually going to be for youth between the ages of 16 and I would say about 25. So the book is geared for youth and teaching them how to create sustainable, healthy relationships, right? And as a result, I believe that a lot of people that are older and even young people will have some interesting love stories. So I'm very interested in any love stories that you have or any love lessons that you have. So definitely email them to me at moreinYoucoaching@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram at moreinYoucoach as well, and on Facebook as Deetra Hester. And also you can find my husband, Charles Hester. He is also on Instagram as MOG Hester, and then he is on Facebook as Charles Hester. So you can find either one of us on social media platforms so you can submit your love lessons or your love stories. We'd love to hear from you. I also upload the raw version of this particular podcast recording. So if you ever want to catch us live when we're recording, we record on Instagram, and that will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is under Deetra Hester. And also on that same YouTube channel, I do vlogs about beauty and fitness. I love talking about transformation because I'm a transformation coach. So I'm also a makeup artist as well. So any of the ladies that would love to have a beauty coaching sessions, I do offer those for free, especially for those that are interested in purchasing some makeup or trying to figure out a skincare routine. That would be great for you. And those of you that are just needing some inspiration when it comes to fitness, then you will love the YouTube channel, love following me on the Instagram as well. So make sure that if you love this content, you subscribe and you also leave a 5-star review for the podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And those of you that really would love to have a book right now, I do have one out called There's More in You, How to Get Over It. And you can go to my website, moreinYoucoaching.com, and you can download that free ebook. If you love the material, you love all the content, I do offer coaching programs as well. I offer a course. If you need a complete transformation from the inside out, then that will be a 90-day program. If you just want a few tips or maybe some lessons, I would recommend beauty coaching for the ladies. And then if you just feel like you want to reach out and touch, then feel free to email me any prayer request. I will be happy to send you a personalized prayer. But again, we really appreciate you tuning in to another Love Lessons with the Hesters.